So, just coming at you with our history for the week. Sorry, just make sure it's going. It's going a little slow, but it's working. All right. Read through this. It's just kind of interesting, but it's not super important. Neutrality or war. So Jefferson is kind of at a tight spot here. Okay. England and France have been at war for over 100 years, on and off. And they have, the 100 Years' War. And they are now in a new setting, okay? Because France suddenly has really good leadership with Napoleon, who is going to basically lead France to victory for quite a while until finally a coalition beats him. But France is on the up and up. And Jefferson, as you remember, was a big fan of France, and specifically he was a big fan of the revolution to some extent. He didn't like the bloodiness that happened when some of the more extreme leaders were in charge. But I believe he seemed pretty content with Napoleon, especially because Napoleon had just sold Jefferson the Louisiana Purchase, right? A huge amount of land that has been sold to America. Now, of course, we'll see in just the next page that there were people living on that land who maybe didn't agree with all that. But in any case, the European powers saw that as a legally binding land trade. What's happening here is Jefferson is worried about these things, and he is beginning to try to figure out how to navigate this. Okay, he eventually, after 8 years, he steps down. Okay, trying to keep the tradition that Washington established, because there's no term limits at this point. Okay, there's nothing in the Constitution says that a president can only be around for 2 terms. But that's what George Washington did, and so that's the precedent. Okay, so Jefferson's going to do the same thing. James Madison is going to pop in here, and he's going to be the president for a while. You're going to see these embargoes, impressment, customs, as there's all of this drama between America, France, and England, and specifically between England and America. Okay. Native Americans Unite. The book doesn't do a great job of talking about Tecumseh, but he is quite interesting. Okay, so there was talk about a Native American state within the United States. That really comes later. That's not quite this guy. What this guy wanted to do is he wanted a Native American state as in its own country, not a state within America. And he begins creating this pan-Indian alliance. And he's very eloquent, and he is able to do a lot of these things. He's quite successful, actually, with this. Peace pipe's kind of cool, by the way. This piece of war, this, tomahawk of war that has been turned into a pipe that can be smoked, and thus you are essentially, in English we talk about something, swords to plowshares, melting down your swords to turn them into plows, and this is a similar sort of concept. You're taking your weapon and you're turning it into something peaceful. Okay, smoking with somebody is a chill thing. It is not an act of war. You don't smoke with your enemies. You smoke and talk and hang out with your friends. And so it's kind of a cool, I really like this concept. Though I'm not a big fan of smoking, but I do like the idea of the symbolism of taking a thing of war and turning it into a thing of peace. Okay. Now, the other thing to know here is that Tecumseh is very successful getting the various Native Americans together and creating a the beginnings of a Native American state. Now, of course, the Americans are scared about this. They do not want a Native American state. They do not want to have the Native Americans to be independent in that way. And so they put together their army and they march over there. Unfortunately, Tecumseh's brother, who has changed his name to the Prophet, he actually had a vision. Some people say alcohol-induced, other people say other things, or maybe a vision. Who knows, you know? But he correctly identified and correctly foretold that there was going to be a solar eclipse, which is, you know, relatively convincing when you're able to be like, hey, the sun is about to disappear, and it did. So people are like, oh, he is in tune with nature. So a lot of Native Americans came to Prophetstown, okay, not only for defense but also to be a part of this Native American alliance. Unfortunately, what will happen is the Tecumseh is away for a while, trying to get more people to join their cause, and his brother leads them against tries to do a surprise attack against the army that was there to attack. So they're like, okay, these white folks are coming to attack us. Let's hit them first. Unfortunately, it does not go very well. At this point, the American troops have the best guns around, which are repeating rifles, Winchesters, and are able to... actually, no, I guess they don't have repeating rifles yet. Sorry, that's later. That's like 100 years later. My bad. But they do still have much better weaponry than what the Native Americans have. Americans are good at one thing, and that's making guns. And so, unfortunately, the Native Americans, who also have guns, they just don't have, you know, top-of-the-line guns, are going to struggle. So the Native Americans lose this fight. Now, the book claims that the Native Americans burned down their own village as they're leaving. I've read other sources that could really disagree with that, and claim that the white folks, the army, burned it down. Either way, most of the Native Americans got away and escaped after the fight, and the town got burned down, but it is unclear who burned what down. I want to clarify something. Warhawks, this is where that term comes from, but it is still used today. Okay, anyone who is focused or thinks that they can win a war or wants to get into a war is called a warhawk. Okay, we were talking about this a lot when I was your age, because this is when we were thinking about going to war in the Middle East, and so we had a lot of warhawks, specifically George Bush and Cheney were both warhawks. They thought they could win a war easily and quickly in the Middle East. Well, we could destroy an army really easily and quickly, but winning a war, it turns out, is much harder because, much like Vietnam, it's hard to actually find the people you're trying to kill and not just kill innocent folks. So we really struggled. But this idea of warhawks, it's also going to be the reason we get into World War I, is because there's a bunch of people who think that we can win wars, and that wars will be easy. Turns out wars are never easy. Whoops, no way we could have known that. I mean, there's every way we could have known that. We end up at the War of 1812 is really interesting. This is, of course, where we get our Star-Spangled Banner from, but this is also when the White House is burned to the ground. A lot of interesting things happen here. Andrew Jackson first comes on the scene as a military leader. We're going to hear more about him later. He is in the running for worst president ever. But I don't know if I agree with that. Definitely, he is one of the worst people to be a president, in my opinion. But we'll talk about that, and you can make your own minds up about that. I have a bias against Andrew Jackson. he was not good to Native Americans, and as a wife who is Native, you know, that's my bias. All right. I do like $20 bills though, so yeah, I think this does a decent job. This whole deal is kind of weird. We have a whole fight that happens after peace has been declared, but because it takes so long to let people know and to get word back to somewhere, we actually didn't know that we had won until way later. I talked about these forts and how they were built before, about how they allow you to have more protection. It's harder to siege a place like this. Anyway, yeah, I think you basically got it. This is not too complicated here. I won't spend more of your time. Please get ready for this. Okay, I'll try and make this a short one for you though. All right, guys, have a good one. Bye.